Most people think leadership is about power. Some think it is about confidence. Others believe it comes from intelligence or experience. But if you watch closely, truly great leaders are recognized by something much simpler. The way they speak. The way a leader talks is not loud. It is not rushed. It is not filled with unnecessary words. Instead, it is calm, clear, and intentional. When they speak, people listen. Not because they are forced to, but because something in their voice makes people feel safe, focused, and certain. A leader does not speak to impress. A leader speaks to connect. Think about it. You have met people who talk a lot but say very little. And you have met people who say very little but leave a deep impact. Leaders belong to the second group. They understand that words are not just sounds. Words are tools. Words can guide people, calm people, and move people toward action. One of the biggest differences between ordinary communication and leadership communication is clarity. Leaders do not confuse people. They simplify things. Even when the situation is complicated, they break it down in a way that everyone can understand. Because a confused team is a weak team. But a clear team is powerful. When a leader speaks, they remove noise. They remove extra details that do not matter. They focus on what is important right now. This is why their words feel strong. Not because they are complex, but because they are precise. Another important thing about how leaders talk is that they pause. They are not in a hurry to fill every silence. Silence does not scare them. In fact, they use it. A short pause before or after an important sentence gives weight to their words. Makes people pay attention. Most people rush when they talk. They feel like they need to prove something. But leaders do not rush. They know their value is not in how fast they speak, but in what they say. Confidence in speech does not come from big vocabulary. Comes from certainty. Leaders speak as if they believe what they are saying. Even when they are unsure, they do not spread confusion. Instead, they say, "We will figure this out," or "Here is what we know so far." This builds trust. Trust is the real power behind a leader's voice. Without trust, words are empty. With trust, even simple words become powerful. Leaders also listen more than they speak. This might sound surprising, but it is true. A leader who only talks cannot understand their people. And if they cannot understand their people, they cannot lead them. When leaders listen, they do not interrupt. They do not wait for their turn to speak. They actually try to understand. And when they respond, their words feel thoughtful. People feel heard. And when people feel heard, they are more willing to follow. Another key trait is emotional control. Leaders do not let emotions control their words. They do not speak in anger. They do not react instantly. They take a moment, they think, and then they respond. This does not mean leaders have no emotions. It means they choose when and how to express them. In difficult situations, people look at the leader, not just for solutions, but for emotional direction. If the leader panics, everyone panics. If the leader stays calm, people feel stable. That calmness shows in their voice. Leaders also avoid blaming language. Instead of saying, "You messed this up," they say, "Let's fix this." This small shift changes everything. It turns a problem into a shared responsibility instead of a personal attack. Because leadership is not about pointing fingers. It is about moving forward. Another powerful habit of leaders is that they ask the right questions. Instead of always giving answers, they guide people to think. Questions like, "What do you think is the best approach?" Or "What can we improve here?" create engagement. When people are involved in thinking, they feel ownership. And when people feel ownership, they perform better. Leaders also repeat important messages. Not in a boring way, but in a consistent way. They understand that people do not remember everything the first time. So they reinforce key ideas again and again. Clarity is not just about saying something once. It is about making sure it is understood. Tone is another important part of how leaders talk. The same sentence can feel very different depending on how it is said. Leaders are aware of their tone. They do not sound aggressive unless needed. They do not sound weak. They aim for a tone that is firm but respectful. Respect is always present in a leader's speech. Even when correcting someone, they do it in a way that protects dignity. Because once respect is lost, trust is damaged. And without trust, leadership weakens. Leaders also know when not to speak. This is a skill most people ignore. Sometimes the best response is silence. Not every comment needs a reaction. Not every situation needs immediate words. Silence can show strength, can show control, can show that a leader is thinking deeply. Over time, people start recognizing this pattern. They know that when the leader speaks, it matters. Because the leader does not speak unnecessarily. Another thing that separates leaders is that they speak with purpose. Every conversation has a direction. They are not just talking randomly. They are guiding the conversation toward clarity, action, or understanding. Even in casual conversations, leaders are aware of their words. Not in a stressful way, but in a mindful way. They do not gossip. They do not spread negativity. They do not waste energy on useless discussions. Their words reflect their mindset. And mindset is everything. If a leader constantly complains, the team becomes negative. If a leader speaks with hope and solutions, the team becomes stronger. Language shapes reality. Leaders also adapt their communication depending on the situation. They do not use the same tone everywhere. When talking to a team, they might be encouraging. When handling a crisis, they become more direct. When mentoring someone, they become more patient. Flexibility in communication makes a leader effective. But even with all this, the most powerful thing about how leaders talk is authenticity. They are not trying to act like someone else. They are not copying a style. They are simply clear, honest, and intentional. People can sense when someone is fake. And they can also sense when someone is real. Authenticity builds connection. And connection builds influence. In the end, leadership is not about speaking more. It is about speaking better. It is about choosing words that bring clarity instead of confusion. It is about creating trust instead of fear. It is about guiding people instead of controlling them. And the good news is, this is a skill. Can be learned. Can be practiced. Every time you speak, you are shaping how people see you. You are shaping how people feel around you. And slowly, you are shaping your ability to lead. Because before people follow your actions, they listen to your words. Most people speak to respond. Leaders speak to influence. This is a small difference on the surface, but it changes everything. When someone is just responding, they are reacting to what is happening. But when a leader speaks, they are shaping what happens next. They are not just part of the conversation. They are directing it. One of the most powerful tools leaders use is storytelling. Not long, complicated stories. Simple, clear stories that make a point. Because facts inform, but stories stick. If a leader wants to explain a lesson, they do not just give instructions. They give an example. They say, "I've seen this happen before," or "Let me tell you something that worked." This makes the message feel real. People remember stories far longer than instructions. Another important skill is framing. Leaders understand that the same situation can be described in different ways. And the way it is described changes how people feel about it. For example, instead of saying, "This is a problem," a leader might say, "This is a challenge we can solve." The situation is the same, but the energy is different. Leaders choose words that create strength, not weakness. They do not ignore reality, but they present it in a way that keeps people moving forward. Another thing you will notice is that leaders are very careful with negative language. They do not constantly say things like, "This won't work," or "This is impossible." Even when something is difficult, they shift the language. They might say, "This will take effort," or "We need a better approach." This keeps the door open. Because once people believe something is impossible, they stop trying. Leaders keep belief alive. Now let's talk about authority. Not the kind that comes from position, but the kind that comes from presence. When a leader speaks with authority, it is not about being loud. It is about being grounded. Their voice is steady. Their words are clear. They do not over-explain. Over-explaining often comes from insecurity. Feels like the person is trying to convince others because they are not fully convinced themselves. Leaders say what needs to be said. And then they stop. This creates weight in their words. Another powerful habit is that leaders avoid filler words. Words like, maybe, I think kind of reduce the strength of a message. When overused, they make the speaker sound unsure. Instead of saying, I think we should maybe try this, a leader says, let's try this. Simple, direct, clear. This does not mean they are always right. It means they speak with clarity. Clarity creates confidence in others. Leaders also know how to handle disagreement. They do not get defensive immediately. They do not raise their voice. They listen first, and then they respond with calm reasoning. They might say, I understand your point, or that's a fair concern, before sharing their perspective. This shows maturity. It also keeps the conversation productive instead of emotional. Because once a conversation becomes emotional, logic disappears. Another thing that makes leaders powerful communicators is consistency. They do not change their message every day. Their values, their direction, and their tone remain stable. People know what to expect from them. This creates a sense of security. Imagine a leader who says one thing today and something completely different tomorrow. People will feel confused. And confusion leads to doubt. Consistency builds trust over time. Leaders also use repetition in a smart way. They repeat key ideas in different forms. Not because people are slow, but because repetition creates clarity. If something is important, it needs to be heard more than once. You will also notice that leaders often summarize conversations. At the end of a discussion, they bring everything together. They might say, so here's what we're doing, or let's keep it simple. This removes confusion and gives direction. Without this, people leave conversations with different understandings. And that leads to mistakes. Another powerful habit is that leaders speak in a way that includes others. They use words like we, us, and together. Instead of saying, you need to fix this, they say, let's fix this. This creates unity. Because leadership is not about standing above people. It is about standing with them. Now let's talk about energy. Every time a leader speaks, they transfer energy. Can be positive or negative. Can be calm or chaotic. Can be focused or scattered. People may forget the exact words, but they remember how they felt. This is why tone, pace, and emotion matter so much. If a leader sounds tired, the team feels tired. If a leader sounds motivated, the team feels motivated. Energy is contagious. Leaders are aware of this, even if they do not think about it consciously. They manage their state before they speak. Another advanced skill is knowing how to simplify complex ideas. This is harder than it sounds. Anyone can make something complicated. Takes real understanding to make something simple. Leaders break things down into clear steps. They remove unnecessary details. They focus on what matters now. Because clarity leads to action. Confusion leads to delay. Leaders also ask for feedback, but in a smart way. Instead of asking, any thoughts? They ask specific questions. What's unclear here? What would you change? Does this make sense? Specific questions lead to useful answers. General questions often lead to silence. Another thing leaders do is acknowledge effort. When someone does something well, they say it. Not in an exaggerated way, but in a real way. Good work on that. That was handled well. This builds morale. People feel valued. And when people feel valued, they give more effort. Leaders understand that communication is not just about direction. It is also about recognition. Now here is something most people ignore. Leaders prepare before important conversations. They do not just speak randomly. If something matters, they think about it first. What is the goal? What needs to be clear? What is the outcome? This preparation makes their speech more effective. It also reduces mistakes. Because once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Leaders respect that. They also stay aware of body language, even though this is not about talking directly. Because communication is not just words. Eye contact, posture, and facial expression all support the message. If words say one thing but body language says another, people trust the body language. Leaders align both. Another powerful trait is honesty. Leaders do not pretend to know everything. When they do not know, they say, "I don't know yet." But they follow it with, "I'll find out." This builds credibility, because fake confidence is easy to detect over time. Real honesty builds long-term trust. Finally, leaders end conversations with direction. They do not leave things open and unclear. They make sure people know what comes next. What are we doing now? Who is responsible? What is the timeline? Clarity at the end is just as important as clarity at the start. Because leadership is not just about talking well. It is about making sure things actually move forward. This is where most people start to see the difference. Talking is easy, but talking like a leader requires awareness, control, and intention. And once you develop this, people start noticing. Not because you told them you are a leader, but because they can hear it. Most people think persuasion is about convincing others. Leaders understand something different. Real persuasion is not about forcing someone to agree. It is about helping them see things clearly enough that they agree on their own. This is why leaders do not argue the way most people do. When two people argue, they try to win. They raise their voice, repeat their points, and defend their position. But leaders are not focused on winning arguments. They are focused on reaching the best outcome. So instead of saying, "You're wrong," a leader might say, "Let's look at this from another angle." This keeps the conversation open. Because the moment someone feels attacked, they stop listening. Leaders protect the conversation, not just their opinion. Another powerful technique leaders use is slowing down the moment. When a situation becomes tense, most people react faster. Their voice gets quicker. Their tone becomes sharper. Their words lose control. But leaders do the opposite. They slow down. They speak a little softer, a little calmer, a little more controlled. This shift changes the entire atmosphere. Because when one person stays calm, it forces others to come down to that level. Calmness is control, and control is power. Leaders also understand the importance of timing. Not everything needs to be said immediately. Sometimes the best decision is to wait, to let emotions settle, to speak when the moment is right. A message delivered at the wrong time, even if it is correct, can fail. But the same message, delivered at the right time, can create impact. Timing shapes meaning. Now let's talk about something deeper. Silent power. Some of the strongest leaders you will ever notice are not the loudest people in the room. They do not interrupt. They do not dominate every conversation. But when they speak, the room shifts. People pay attention. Why? Because they do not speak all the time. Their words are rare. And rare things feel valuable. This is a mistake many people make. They think speaking more makes them more important. But in reality, speaking less and speaking better creates more respect. Leaders choose their moments. They do not chase attention. Attention comes to them. Another important skill is handling pressure conversations. These are moments where emotions are high. Mistakes have happened. Stakes are serious. This is where leadership communication is tested. In these moments, leaders follow a simple principle. They separate the person from the problem. Instead of attacking the person, they focus on the situation. Instead of saying, "You failed," they say, "This didn't go as planned." This keeps the conversation constructive. Because once a person feels personally attacked, they become defensive. And defensive people do not improve. They protect themselves. Leaders want improvement, not defense. So they create an environment where mistakes can be discussed without fear. This builds growth. Another thing leaders do in pressure situations is they control their first response. The first reaction is emotional. The second response is intentional. Leaders wait for the second, even if it takes a few seconds of silence. That pause can save relationships, decisions, and trust. Now let's talk about persuasion at a deeper level. Leaders do not just present ideas. They build alignment. They show how the idea benefits everyone involved. They connect the idea to shared goals. Instead of saying, "This is what we should do," they say, "This helps us achieve what we all want." This creates agreement without force. Because people naturally move toward what benefits them. Leaders also understand that people are different. Some people respond to logic. Some respond to emotion. Some respond to vision. So leaders adjust their language. With a logical person, they use clear facts and steps. With an emotional person, they use tone and understanding. With a visionary person, they paint a bigger picture. This flexibility makes their communication powerful. Because one style does not fit everyone. Another advanced habit is removing ego from speech. Leaders do not need to prove they are right all the time. If someone else has a better idea, they accept it. They might say, "That's a better approach," or "Let's go with that." This builds respect. Because people trust leaders who are focused on results, not ego. Ego blocks communication. Clarity improves it. Leaders also know how to reset a conversation. If things go off track, they bring it back. Let's focus on the main point. Let's simplify this. Here's what matters right now. This prevents wasted time and confusion. Because conversations can easily drift. Leaders keep direction. Another powerful trait is that leaders make decisions visible through their words. They do not hide behind unclear statements. They say things like, "We're moving forward with this," or "We're changing direction." Clear decisions reduce uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the biggest causes of stress in any team. Leaders remove that. Now here is something subtle but important. Leaders match their words with action. If they say something, they follow through. Because if words and actions do not match, communication loses value. Over time, people stop trusting what is said. And when trust is gone, leadership weakens. Consistency between words and actions creates credibility. And credibility makes communication stronger. Leaders also understand the long-term effect of their words. A single sentence can stay in someone's mind for years. A careless comment can damage confidence. A thoughtful sentence can inspire growth. So they are careful, not silent, not afraid, but intentional. Another powerful communication habit is ending conversations with clarity and energy. Not just "okay," or "we'll see," but something like, "Let's move forward," or "We've got this." This leaves people with direction and confidence. Because the ending of a conversation often becomes the memory of it. Leaders use that moment well. Now let's go even deeper. Leaders do not just communicate information. They communicate belief. When they speak, they transfer certainty. Not fake confidence. Real belief in moving forward. And this belief spreads. Because people are always looking for direction. And the one who speaks with clarity, calmness, and belief naturally becomes that direction. At this level, leadership communication is no longer just a skill. It becomes a presence. Something people feel even before they fully understand it. And once you develop this, you do not need to tell people you are a leader. They recognize it. In your tone. In your words. In your silence. Another advanced skill is vision casting. Leaders do not just communicate instructions, they communicate purpose. They paint a picture of what success looks like, why it matters, and how each person contributes. Instead of saying, "Complete this project," they say, "Imagine a team that works seamlessly together, delivering results that matter to everyone. This project shows the world who we are and what we can achieve together." Vision inspires action because it taps into meaning, not just duty. People act when they see why it matters. Leaders also use anchoring language. They repeat key phrases that become guiding principles. Excellence in everything we do. Solutions over blame. One team, one vision. These anchors simplify decision-making. When people are unsure, they recall the anchor. It shapes their actions subconsciously. Another subtle but powerful technique is strategic storytelling. Leaders tell stories not to entertain, but to teach, motivate, and align. Each story has a clear lesson. Each story models behavior. Each story reinforces culture. Leaders also know the weight of their words in tough decisions. They speak with deliberation, not haste. They do not fill silence with weak words. They pause to choose the right phrasing. Because the right word can inspire confidence, and the wrong word can destroy trust. Public speaking at this level is also about engagement, rhythm, and flow. Leaders alternate between short, impactful sentences and longer explanations. They create a cadence that holds attention. They pause strategically, emphasizing key points. They ask rhetorical questions to provoke thought. Even in written communication, these principles apply. Clear structure, simple language, purposeful repetition, and emotional resonance make written words feel as alive as spoken words. Leaders also adapt to their audience. They read moods, anticipate reactions, and tailor messages. They know that one message delivered the same way to two different audiences can create entirely different outcomes. In high-stakes negotiations, leaders use active listening and mirroring. They reflect back what they hear to show understanding, validate concerns, and guide the conversation. This builds trust and makes others more receptive. They also leverage positive reinforcement in their communication. Recognizing effort and contribution motivates teams far more than criticism alone. "I noticed your effort here, and it made a difference," resonates deeper than a simple "good job." Leaders also stay future-focused. They avoid dwelling on blame. They focus on solutions and what comes next. This keeps conversations productive and prevents resentment from growing. Finally, advanced leaders combine all these skills into what could be called presence-driven communication. Presence is the invisible force behind words. It is how people feel when a leader speaks. They feel calm, confident, inspired, and aligned. Presence is built over time through consistency, authenticity, preparation, and intentionality in every word. When you speak with presence, people follow because they want to, not because they have to. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to influence, to teach, to align, to inspire. Every sentence can guide decisions, shift perspectives, and shape culture. And that is the ultimate truth about leadership communication. It is not about talking more, but about talking right with purpose, clarity, and presence. Leaders do not simply give instructions. They move people, even silently. They speak so others act. They listen so others are heard. They inspire so others excel. If you master how leaders talk, you are not just communicating, you are leading through words. By now you've seen the basics: clarity, calmness, purpose. But there's a higher level of communication that separates leaders who manage teams from leaders who inspire movements. The first key at this level is influence. Influence is not about manipulation. It is about guiding people toward decisions that are right for them and right for the organization. The strongest leaders influence without anyone feeling pressured. They do this by aligning vision with values. When a leader speaks, they show how their ideas connect to what the team cares about. People are naturally motivated to follow when they see how their personal goals and values match the direction being taken. Another technique is strategic framing. Leaders frame ideas in ways that highlight benefits rather than risks. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, they emphasize what will grow, what will improve, what is possible. Framing shifts perception, turns hesitation into confidence. Leaders also use questions to guide thought. Instead of telling people exactly what to think, they ask questions that make them arrive at the conclusion themselves. Questions like, "What outcome would matter most here? How could we achieve this faster? If this approach worked perfectly, what would it look like?" This approach empowers teams. People act faster when they feel ownership over the ideas. Now let's talk about speaking in public and in meetings. Most people fear public speaking. Most people speak poorly in meetings. Leaders turn these moments into opportunities. The first rule is engage early. Leaders capture attention in the first few sentences. They use a striking fact, a short story, or a bold statement. People decide within seconds whether to pay attention. Leaders know this. They make it count. The next rule is structure your message. Leaders organize ideas so people can follow. 3 points, clear steps, summary at the end. No wandering thoughts. No unnecessary words. This simple structure creates clarity and authority. Voice control is critical. Leaders vary tone, pace, and volume. They emphasize key words. They pause for effect. Pauses are not silence. They are moments that make words resonate. Leaders also read the room. They notice body language. They adjust speed and tone if the audience seems confused or distracted. This adaptability makes their communication feel personal and connected. Another high-level skill is storytelling with purpose. Leaders do not tell stories just for entertainment. Every story has a lesson, a vision, or a call to action. The story becomes a bridge between ideas and emotions. It makes abstract concepts tangible. When handling objections or disagreements, leaders do not fight. They acknowledge concerns, validate emotions, and redirect to solutions. They turn resistance into collaboration. A simple acknowledgement like, "I understand why that feels risky," followed by a solution-focused statement, diffuses tension instantly. Negotiation is another area where leaders shine. In negotiations, leaders speak with confidence but without arrogance. They listen more than they talk. They repeat key points for clarity. They present options, not ultimatums. This creates trust and keeps discussions productive. Leaders also master the art of repetition for emphasis. Not annoying repetition, but purposeful reinforcement. They repeat the key principle, the core message, the main takeaway, so it sticks. People do not always remember everything once, but they remember what is repeated with intention. Silence is their hidden weapon. A leader can use silence to encourage reflection, calm tension, or let a point sink in. People often feel compelled to fill silence, but leaders use it strategically. It signals confidence, patience, and control. Advanced leaders are also masters of alignment. Their words connect people to a common goal. They reduce miscommunication. They make sure everyone is pulling in the same direction. Alignment comes from clarity, consistency, and repetition. Finally, let's discuss the power of authenticity and presence. All techniques, all strategies, all deliberate speech only work if the leader is genuine. People sense when someone is authentic. They feel it in the voice, in the expressions, in the attention given. Authenticity builds trust. Presence builds influence. Together, they create authority that cannot be ignored. Leaders do not need to shout, dominate, or command. Their words, delivered with clarity, purpose, and presence, move people naturally. Their silence, pauses, and careful framing speak as loudly as their sentences. Their authenticity ensures that what they say is believed. Their consistency ensures it is trusted. At this stage, leadership communication is no longer just a skill. It is an identity. People do not follow just ideas. They follow the voice, the presence, and the conviction of the leader delivering them. And here's the truth. The best leaders never stop improving how they talk. Every conversation, every meeting, every presentation is an opportunity to refine clarity, strengthen influence, and deepen trust. The way leaders talk shapes culture, inspires teams, and builds legacies. The words you choose today can guide actions for months, years, or even decades. Because before actions happen, people listen. And the leaders who master how to speak are the ones who shape what follows. By now, you understand the basics. Clarity, calmness, intention, and presence. But leadership communication at the highest level requires persuasion that moves minds and hearts, not just compliance. True persuasion uses 3 pillars: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is credibility. People follow leaders who are believable, who have integrity, who speak consistently with their actions. A leader who lacks ethos will struggle to be heard, no matter how clever their words are. Pathos is emotion. People make decisions based on feelings first, logic second. Leaders know how to connect their words to emotion. They tell stories, use tone, and evoke empathy. They make people feel the reason to act, not just think about it. Logos is logic. Facts, evidence, clear reasoning. Leaders use logos to make their case rational and undeniable. But logic alone is rarely enough. Without ethos and pathos, logic feels cold and unconvincing. Great leaders balance all 3. They are credible, they connect emotionally, and they reason clearly. Now let's explore crisis communication. Crises are tests. Every leader faces moments where stakes are high, mistakes have occurred, or uncertainty dominates. How a leader speaks during a crisis can either calm or ignite chaos. Leaders start by acknowledging reality. They do not sugarcoat problems, but they avoid panic. This is serious, they say. Here is what we know. Here is what we are doing. Next, they provide direction. People look for answers in uncertainty. Clear, actionable guidance reassures teams and prevents indecision. Leaders also manage emotion during crises. They speak calmly, slowly, and with measured energy. They pause. They choose words that reduce fear, not amplify it.